let's briefly look at morphology. And morphology is a very rich field. You can do a whole PhD in morphology, and it's not my speciality, so take everything I say here with a big grain of salt. A morpheme is the smallest meaning-bearing unit of a language. So it's the smallest thing that I can attach meaning to. So for example, unlikeliest, unlikely, and ist is the three morphemes in that for that word. Because un has meaning, right? Unclear. This lecture is unclear, right? So un has meaning on its own. Ist has meaning on its own. You can stick it at the end of a word and it modifies the word. Okay, greatest lecturer ever, right? So those are some of the morphemes in English. Morphology is the study of how words are constructed from morphemes. So it's basically the study of the rules for a particular language about how morphemes are glued together and how you construct the word from the individual morphemes. So in English, for example, morphology would tell you that you build up desalination like this, but not like 8 salin isn't the, okay? Because there's rules about how morphemes should go together. Un normally goes at the start of a word, not at the end. In some languages, morphology matters a lot. So I've already mentioned that many of the South African languages, isiZulu, isiXhosa, are morphologically rich languages. There are other examples as well. So here's an example of a Russian sentence and another Russian sentence and the English translation. Quickly stare at that and tell me the two morphemes that differ. So here we've got an A instead of an and here we've got an instead of an A. And it's crazy because that actually flipped who's giving what to who, right? So if this is a murder trial and John murdered Jane, right, and you get your morphemes wrong, then all of a sudden Jane murdered John, okay, in Russian. So morphology is something that maybe we don't appreciate so much in English, but in many other languages it plays a massive role. Terminology around morphemes. The root morpheme or the stem morpheme is basically the central morpheme giving a word its meaning. So fox, cat, small, or walk would be your stem or your root morpheme. Affixes are the stuff that I stick on to my root or my stem morpheme in order to construct my word. So you've got different things. You've got like a postfix, postfixes, prefixes. This is an inflex, but we don't have that many in English, right? Where you stick something in the middle of a word. So absolutely, abso-bloody-lutely, right? So English only has a handful of them, okay? And that modifies the word. It makes it more extreme, okay? Abso-flippantly. Sounds a little bit like a kindergarten child cursing, but you get the idea. In Afrikaans, I think we've got ge, which you sometimes sit in the middle of a word to form the past tense. Can someone think of an example with that? Uitgeëet, perfect. So uiteet, and now you put in uitgeëet, and then you get an umlaut on the E because there are so many E's next to each other. Okay, cool. So that's an inflex. There's also circumfixes, which are things that you put on both sides of a word. That's, I don't know of any in English, but I might be wrong. I think the example in maybe in German is like gesagt, which is, I think it means I have said, right? What happened is to form the past tense, you stuck a g at the front and a t at the end. Sag, I'm not sure if that means said, but okay, and then gesagt, you put on both sides. So that's morphemes and morphology. There's this nice little example that I recently spotted in my son's isiXhosa children's books, where you get these little pictures, and I thought I'd show this because it's quite interesting to try and figure out what are the different morphemes in a language like isiXhosa, which is morphologically very rich, given that you've got the grounded signal. In other words, you see a picture, like maybe like a dog here with the corresponding word. And then you can maybe guess like a word like inja means dog. But stare at these pictures a little bit and then see if you can figure out what the postfix or the suffix ana, what does that mean?
So if you stare at this for a little bit, you'd see here we've got a dog and here we've got a little puppy, baby dog. Here we've got a cat and here we've got a little baby cat. And what you see is that in both cases, when you go from the adult animal to the little infant animal, then you get the suffix ana attached to the word. I don't speak any Xhosa, but I was trying to figure out whether I can see from the images, whether I can figure out what the different morphemes in isiXhosa means.